Okay. This is a message that I feel nervous to share. And I feel nervous to share it because Spirit is actually asking me to explicitly ask you to share this message with someone else. And that is not something that I ever explicitly encourage anyone to do in any of my videos. So it feels very much outside of my comfort zone. I have a pretty small channel. I'm not here to go viral or be a YouTube sensation. I'm showing up because Spirit is asking me to show up here on this platform and to share what moves through me. I'm typically pretty okay with knowing that the messages that I share might be for a pretty small collective, but this one, this message, if you are here right now, Spirit is asking me to ask you to not just receive this message for yourself, but to actually consider, if it feels aligned, sharing it with someone else. You are here aligning with my energy right now because you are a person who is on the side of life, on the side of love, on the side of liberation, on the side of the planet, on the side of our shared awakening. You are someone who cares deeply about our return to more sustainable and regenerative and restorative ways of living and being as humans. And you are here to receive this message in this moment because Spirit really wants you to receive this. What I heard from Spirit was those of us who know that we are here to be a part of our planetary awakening through love, those of us who know that we are here for our collective liberation, that's you. We have to stop calling ourselves the resistance. Spirit says we have to stop defining the actions that we are taking as resistance. And Spirit says we have to stop naming ourselves as this and identifying ourselves as this because it's actually our opponents, the opponents of love, the opponents of life who are resisting. We are not resisting. And I'm going to try to break this down as clearly as I can. It's a lot of energy that's moving through me right now. If I pause, if I get tripped up on my words, I trust that you will have the patience and the grace to really be with this message as it's moving through me. But I understand, and I'm sure you understand, why that word resistance is used and how it makes sense through a lens of the historical, through a lens of the political, through a lens of where we are positioned in relation to state power. So it's not that that language doesn't make sense. You know, however, that words carry energy. You know that the language that you use to describe yourself, the language that you identify with, you know that the words that literally are spoken through you carry very specific energies. And there's a really specific energy that the word resistance carries. And you know that, right? If you just feel into your body right now, when I say the word resistance, what happens? It's this, right? It's this energy. it's tightening, it's clenching, it's tensing, and it's literally my hand balls into a fist, right? It's fight flight energy, right? Resistance is fight flight energy. You are here to realign. You are not here to resist. You are here to realign with what is real and what is true about us as humans. We are here to realign with our natural ways of being. And so you are not the resistance. You are the realignment. You are the recalibration. You are the reorientation toward our natural qualities and capacities as humans on this planet. Humans who are here to be a part of an ecosystem that is rooted in interdependence and harmony. And what that means is that not only are you not the resistance, you are actually dropping your resistance. You are dropping your resistance to your true nature. All of the work that you have done to heal yourself, to liberate yourself, to reorient toward your authenticity in this lifetime, that is you actually dropping your resistance to the truth of who you are here to be as a part of the collective that we are here to be at this moment in human history. And what Spirit told me is that it's actually our opponents who are the resistance. You are not the resistance, they are, because they are resisting this great recalibration and reorientation. They are resisting this great turning. They are, it's literally for me the image of a toddler throwing a tantrum. That is what we are witnessing right now from those who are opposed to love, opposed to life, opposed to harmony and interdependence and a shared, regenerative, sustainable coexistence. They are throwing tantrums. They are kicking and flailing and screaming and crying. They are the ones who are resisting. They are doing everything in their power to resist because they know that this reorientation is already happening. They know that this great turning, this great awakening, it's already happening. They can't actually stop it. And they're doing everything in their power to resist it. They are the resistance. You are the realignment and the reawakening of what has always been real and true about us that is now rerouting into the structure of this earth at this time as that old false structure crumbles. So Spirit says, you can't call yourself the resistance. You can't call what you're doing resistance. We collectively can't call what we're doing resistance. We have to actually recognize how that word has energetically been distorted and weaponized against us, when in reality, it's actually our opponents who are the resistance to the truth of what is already happening on this planet, which is a return to love. And there's something specific about this word opponent that wants to come through. I use that word opponent because I feel like it's the best linguistic approximation that I have to try to describe what it is that I mean, but also because they are in opposition. They are in opposition to this world that we are co-creating and reorienting toward. And so I use this word rather than using a word like enemy. It might be the case that those who are in opposition, those who are resisting this truth of who we are and who we're returning to, It may be the case that they view you, that they think you are their enemy. And that doesn't mean that you have to view them as your enemy. It doesn't mean that you have to try to conjure up in yourself the hatred and enmity that they feel toward you and try to return that or retaliate that. They're in opposition to the truth. And so that is why I think the word opponent wants to come through in this moment. And what Spirit is saying to me now is that ultimately they are in opposition to this new shared reality that we are co-creating because they are in opposition to themselves. They are in opposition to themselves. They are in opposition to their own humanity. They are in opposition to their own humanity, and then they projectile vomit all of that onto everything and everyone else, right? You, all of us as humans, but you know what it feels like to be in opposition to yourself. The difference is that you are a person who, prior to your healing work and inner liberation work, you were a person who was in opposition to yourself, and you just weaponized that energy against yourself over and over and over. You internalized it and made yourself your enemy. So you know what that feels like. You're just witnessing a different expression of that in the people that I would call our opponents at this time. You're witnessing what it looks like when, instead of them weaponizing that against themselves, they project it out and weaponize it against other people and against the planet. But really, it is ultimately their own opposition to their own humanity that you are witnessing. And you are no longer in opposition to yourself. You have done so much healing work, so much liberating work inside of your own body, your own system, that you are not in opposition to any part of you. And that means that you can show up as a way shower, as a model of what it looks like to not be in opposition to yourself. Anything that we think we are in opposition to outside of us is ultimately pointing us back to some experience of opposition that we are having within ourselves. And so those that I name as our opponents, those who are resisting this awakening on the planet, they are showing you what opposition looks like. You are here to show what harmony, alignment, authenticity, courage to face reality, to face truth inside of you without weaponizing any of it against yourself. You are here to show what that looks like. And in so doing, you are able to co-create this more harmonious reality with other human beings who are showing up in the same way. And so I think this distinction around language really matters in terms of what it's actually describing and the energetic stance that it takes. You are not the resistance, and you can recognize that the people who are our opponents are actually our opponents not because we are in opposition to them, but because they are in opposition to themselves. They think they're in opposition to you, but they are actually in opposition to themselves, to their own humanity, and to what would be required of them to face within themselves in order for them to realign and reorient toward this awakening that we are living through. And Spirit is now reminding me that we have been born into and socialized into a reality that we see crumbling, we see it disintegrating, we see it toppling itself in real time. That's the word, the image. It's like it's toppling itself. But we were born into that. And because we were born into that, it's really important that we remain aware of how we might have internalized the logic of that system. All of us have. It was impossible for us to not internalize the logic of that system to some degree. And what Spirit is saying to me now is that at this moment, at this point, you have done so much work to uproot that logic from your own system. You are now showing up as a person who is radiating and expressing a more truly, authentically human logic, framework, way of being that's rooted in love, rooted in the heart. And we can still find ourselves susceptible to internalizing pieces of that old logic um, if we are not devoted to the practice of self-inquiry, and if we are not devoted to the practice of questioning the language and logics that we are fed. Because they have been fed to us. They've been force-fed to us. This logic of hierarchy, this logic of domination, this logic of us versus them. We're all still, to some degree, unlearning that. And what Spirit is saying is, if we allow their use of this us versus them logic to force us to use it against them in return, in retaliation, more often than not, what is actually going to happen is that we will end up unconsciously using that logic against each other. We will end up unconsciously turning each other into enemies. And so we have to uproot and release that way of relating that says, this person is my enemy and this person is not. That says it's us over here versus them over there. We actually have to uproot that way of relating. And we uproot that so that we don't end up unconsciously weaponizing that against people who are actually not our opponents. Because we think it's possible. Our brains, our egos tell us that it's possible to have that kind of us versus them logic and only apply it to the bad guys. That we can spot and identify who the bad guys are and we can apply it against them. But Spirit is telling us, and I think you probably already know this if you're here. This is probably just a reminder for you that we think we can operate in that way and separate and draw a line, a distinction, and say, I can use this energy against them and not against us. And Spirit's saying that's not actually possible. That it's actually impossible for us to not end up turning that logic against our allies, against our relatives, against those of us who are actually on the same side of love and liberation. We will end up turning each other at some point into the bad guys and applying that same logic against each other when we are not conscious of how we have internalized that logic of our opponents. And we don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to take at face value the logic of our opponents and apply it to this moment in time that we are in. And it doesn't mean that we're not practicing accountability and transparency. It doesn't mean that we're not naming harm and holding boundaries and all of that. You know that. It doesn't mean that we don't get really angry about what's happening. It doesn't mean that either. But it does mean that we are refusing to employ the logic that has been weaponized against us. We refuse to accept that that kind of oppositional, binary, us versus them logic is just a normal, natural way of being as humans. It's not. It was imposed upon us. And we don't have to accept it and take it at face value. We can decide that we care enough about not weaponizing that logic against ourselves, against our own bodies, our own systems, and not unknowingly weaponizing that logic against those of us who are actually orienting in the same direction and co-creating in the same direction. That we are willing to actually let that logic go, let it release itself from our systems, because that logic that says this person is my enemy, that says because this person is my enemy, I have license to hate them, I have license to wish harm on them, I have license to enact violence against them, that is corrosive. That's the word that Spirit is giving to me. It's corrosive. And we, of course, know the corrosive effect that experiencing that logic from our opponents directed toward us has on our bodies and on our relationships and ways of being, on our reality itself, on the planet. We know how corrosive that logic is. And Spirit is reminding you that that logic is also corrosive inside of you and corrosive to your relationships and your efforts to co-create a reality rooted in love. When you are attempting to re-weaponize it is what I'm hearing. But I think you know what I mean. When you are attempting to retaliate and turn that logic back against your opponents, it can't help but also corrode you from the inside out. And that's not what you are here for, my love. That's not what you are here for. You are here to show a different way. You are here to show a love-rooted way of being. You are here to be a love person who helps us to become the love people that we were always meant to be on this planet. I think that's all that wants to come through in this message. I'm really grateful for you being here. I'm really grateful for you meeting me here. I know that it can feel very lonely sometimes to be a love person in the way that you are. Even in the spaces where you have worked toward liberation with others, you have sometimes felt like a bit of an outsider because of how you recognize your love-rooted logic and how it doesn't quite fit into this us versus them, enemy versus enemy logic that even some of our liberatory spaces are still holding. This logic that says that we are here to resist. I want you to know that you are not alone. That those of us who are here to be love and to be way showers through love, we're here. We're here. We're finding each other, right? We're recognizing each other in the wild. And Spirit is working in every way possible to connect us with each other. You finding this video is evidence of that. And this is why I ask you to share this video with other people who you know are similarly oriented so that they know that they are not alone, so that they can be further fortified and rooted in their knowing of who they are here to be, just as me showing up to share this with you, you meeting me and receiving it here helps us both to refortify and reroot with each other. This is a shared collective process. You being here is helping me to remember that I am not alone, just like me being here is helping you to remember that you are not alone. Okay, I think that's it for now, but there will be more to come. I am really finally truly accepting that Spirit wants me to show up here more regularly, to meet you here, to share what moves through me with you. So if you're here, welcome. Thank you. And I'll be back soon because there's a lot more that Spirit wants us to talk about. I love you, and we'll talk soon.